So everyone take a deep breath. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict for the record and refrain from any participation in a particular matter involved. Hearing none. I know we have public comments today. Do we have anyone online?
If there's anyone online who would like to make public comment, please put so in the chat. We do have someone online who has raised their hand.
Okay. Can we actually do the person in the room first? That would be Evelyn.
My name is Evelyn Johnson. I don't know where I'm supposed to be.
If you can go to the front of the room, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm here representing the group known as Sunrise, Western North Carolina. We wanted to talk about something that's not on the agenda. Transit is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, so modernizing our transit is essential. I wanted to see that improving public transit is included in the new bill that's coming out, and I would like for the plan, or actually all of us would like for the plan to include specific funded commitments to implement improvements to increase ridership, such as adding new bus routes, doubling the frequency of service, and building park and rides facilities. Now, park and rides facilities are something that's been on the agenda since 2004. I saw this in the library. It's gone to high priority. I do not know of any that have been built. One of the things about parking is that cars get hot and we need solar power and we need places to put it. Putting that over cars would be a very smart use of space and could be a combination of things that help. One of the things is EV charging. We recommend building out the infrastructure to charge EVs, and you could get a little bit of power from the sun to do that as well, and sell whatever you don't use at the parking garage in it or put in their batteries back to the power companies such as Duke Power. That's about all I had to say. But Sunrise, Western North Carolina, is putting most of this on a petition that's going around and will probably be presented to City Council at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are some mass transit things on the agenda today. Job access, reverse commute. And you'll also notice out front we have just what you said. We have solar power chargers, and the car's charging right now underneath, which I always do because it's renewable. So it's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
somebody doesn't set it on fire before the day's over.
oh, fantastic. All these have. And we have a Marty Benson who would like to make public comment. Just so you know, you have 3 minutes, and we're a little bit lenient, but if you go over, I will stop. Marty?
You should be unmuted.
Are you still wanting to speak? There is another public comment at the end, so if you're not able to speak now,
Hi.
you can speak. Marty?
Yes, this is Marty Benson. I just wanted to make a comment. I work a decent amount with the local Strong Towns group in Asheville, and back in September or August, we made some comments on the proposed streetscape that NCDOT is intending to do along Haywood Road. With that resurfacing project, the roadway maintained a width, NCDOT's plans maintained a width of 14 to 15 feet in front of the Ingalls on Haywood Road there, where it curves. And about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, a driver took out the bus stop on the north side of the road there, critically injuring somebody. One of the modifications that we wanted to that streetscape was to narrow that roadway there, even if just with paint, to a design speed that wasn't 45 or 50 miles an hour. Our understanding is that the speed limit intended to be posted there is 20. But as we said at this meeting, people drive the design and not the speed. So I'm here to request that you guys put pressure on NCDOT to reconsider a design speed of 45 to 50 miles an hour, where we just had somebody take out an entire bus stop structure and a person with it. I think that the proof is in the pudding here. My understanding is that the person who drove through the bus stop was intoxicated, but whether you're sober or drunk, you're encouraged to drive fast by extremely wide lane widths. And it's also important to recognize that this is where the person crashed. So even if they were drunk, the large lane widths that give them the propensity to drive dangerously and the apparent safety that goes with wide lanes to drive without paying adequate attention. So on behalf of that group, I'd really like to ask that you get NCDOT to reconsider painting those lanes at freeway widths. Thanks.
Thank you, Marty. We'll have a discussion with the.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Benson. Just to note that the project that is mentioned is actually part of the consent agenda as part of the amendments to the current transportation improvement program. That's a unique project where NCDOT is resurfacing Haywood Road, and this board put additional funds on that project to help fund some of the community requests for safety improvements along the corridor. Using the state resurfacing as match. So it's a resurfacing plus project. But Mr. Benson we will definitely reach out to Division 13 and extend those concerns and see what can be done to incorporate those.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I really appreciate we've had public comment in the last meeting. Much appreciated. Next, we're going to talk about the approval of the agenda and consent agenda, and Tristan has one note.
One really quick note. One of the items, our Unified Planning Work Program and Self-Certification Checklist. That's normally not a consent agenda item, but we did bring a draft in January, and had some long agendas lately. But one thing we'll be modifying is the amount of funding for our TDM program. That's a program where 50% of the funds come from the state, the other 50% comes from the MPO's federal funds. We will be upping that amount of funding to $84,000 to meet the updated budget needs of that program.
That being said, do I have any motions to approve the agenda and the consent agenda? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Hensley. Okay. Commissioner Hensley. Do we have a second? Second. Jim, thank you. Sorry about that. So we have a first and a second.
Bill Kimroni.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Buncombe County, oh, no, sorry. Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Hendersonville, Jennifer Hensley.
Aye.
Laurel Park, George, wait, I missed one. Sorry. Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechtel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Whitmer. Urban Transit, Larry Harris. Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Aye. Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Did I miss anyone?
Jay Eagle, Henderson County.
Jay,
Eagle.
sorry. Jay Eagle, Henderson County.
I am curious, so this is my first meeting. I'm wondering why you call roll call for that.
We have a mixed, a hybrid meeting, and the state bylaws require that we have a roll call for every vote.
Okay, thank you.
And, Councilman Slater, I'm sorry I called you Jim without. Thank you. Okay. Next is, business, the safety targets.
Okay, you are not confused. This item is back for the third month in a row. So if you'll recall at the last board meeting, the first board meeting, we had Brian Murphy from NCDOT Safety Unit talk about the need and purpose, the general overview of NCDOT safety targets, a federal requirement. At our last meeting, it was voted to not adopt the proposed safety targets. Since then, we've had a number of conversations with our partners at Federal Highways as well as NCDOT about what that means. In general, what it would mean was that without the adoption of safety targets, our transportation improvement program that is required to move funding forward is considered out of compliance with federal regulations. So we are bringing this item back to discuss the safety targets that this board would feel are most acceptable. And so with that, we are going to what we are calling the big guns. Lauren Blackburn with EHB. Lauren is managing our region Safe Streets for Western North Carolina plan. Lauren is also an industry leader in safety planning and safety analysis. And she's done a lot of great work to help look at safety trends as well as potential targets. Lauren, please take it away.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into presentation mode. All right. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. And as Tristan just mentioned, I'm going to talk about safety targets, but I'm going to talk about goals as a way of arriving at a method for setting safety targets. So a couple things to keep in mind here. Your safety targets are, of course, a federally required performance measure that you adopt every year. Safety goals, however, are more of a vision or a description of what your region aspires to for safety and maybe the long term. So I'm going to start off by talking about goals as more of a scenario for helping build into safety targets. And then ultimately, of course, goals in the safety planning context identify specific strategies and then actions that would support them. So just a couple of key differences, of course, that targets, again, are annual or interim objectives. They are updated every year, especially by your MPO. And ideally, they're aligning with a long-term goal, which are high level, oftentimes ambitious, long-term, and or can extend upon a long-term period. So there's a lot of different ways of setting goals, of course. And from a safety perspective, I like to think about them in 4 types of goal setting approaches. One is a fairly common approach, which is called a zero-based goal setting approach. And that's essentially describing a year where you would envision or hope to achieve a goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries by a certain date. Another goal setting approach is a reduction type goal. So that may not mention 0 as a specific outcome, but more of a reduction in those fatalities and serious injuries by a certain date. Other ways of doing it is by talking about averaging, which is something of a way that it's already being done is by looking at annual rolling averages and maybe thinking about it in the future that way, or you can even think about it from a rate-based goal by a percentage of reduction again, ideally by a certain date. So the key ingredients here is a goal is really more of a vision that's describing sort of the ultimate outcome. And while there's not a lot of scientific ways of calculating a goal, it is really more of an expectation or a vision of how you would hope to achieve safety in the long run. And then you could kind of back into a target setting method using that. One thing we did as part of this work for your MPO is we looked historically, and we also did our best to calculate or project out where your safety measures are likely to head over the next 10 years based on data such as population, employment, vehicle miles traveled, and some other criteria. And this is for the entire 5-county region. So it's not just limited to your MPO region, but a reasonably good snapshot of what it could look like over the next 10 years. And essentially what this is describing is based on data and trends. We would expect an increase year over year in terms of those total fatal and serious injury crashes. And again, that's just a baseline. That's not taking into account any specific projects or programs. It's just using data and projecting it forward. So as you're thinking about a safety goal moving forward, I would encourage you to think about it in a couple different ways. One is, what is the best way of describing your vision for safety for the region? What's a scenario that tells a story that you would consider acceptable for the region for both the near and the long term? Or is there a variation or a blend? I think you all have maybe received this in your packets ahead of time. But what I'm going to go through is 4 scenarios. Consider them all different stories about how you could arrive at an end goal. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's not a mathematical computation that supports this, but it's more of an overall description about how the near and the midterm and the long term can influence safety in the long term, and then what that might look like in terms of changes in those total fatal and serious injury crashes. So I'll just go through each of those. And they're, for the purposes of thinking about it from each scenario, we've labeled them as A, B, C, and D. So I'll start off with A. So this A scenario, the best way to describe it from a goal setting perspective would be something like a 50% reduction in fatal and serious injury crashes by around 2035, and then arriving or moving towards 0 by 2050. This is essentially the same as the state goals, and then how they've calculated targets, but that maybe the difference is how we may have visualized the change over that following 30 or so years. Is what would that look like? So this is just painting a story that, it could be that there would be a lot of short-term improvements leading to a fairly quick change, and then a more steady reduction in the latter part of this. So this is one example. And when we talk about targets, I would just point to your attention that, of course, your target setting is in the very, very early part of this. So there's very little difference ultimately in how any of these line graphs show in a first year part of the curvature. Another scenario is a more of a reduction-based goal or a rate-based goal. So this one is describing a 40% reduction by 2040. It may or may not ultimately arrive at a 0, at least in the goal description. We could think about it as really working towards a significant reduction, and then at about the year of your MTP, maybe that's where there is a point of where it's consistent and it's not increasing anymore. And ultimately, we of course still hope for it to arrive at 0. Another scenario would be more of a steady reduction, and then moving towards 0 by a date after your MTP, which could be set at around 2055. So this would be more of a moderate start, and then maybe over time, more safety improvements and bigger projects are implemented that could ultimately push that number towards 0 in the long term. And then a 4th scenario would be more of a significant reduction. Again, this is similar to that B scenario where there isn't necessarily a goal statement describing a 0 outcome, but more of a goal towards a significant reduction, at least not too long after your MTP year, more of a steady reduction in the near term. And then, you could think about this as maybe more of a realistic approach in the long term. So those are 4 scenarios that help think about goal setting. And then what we've tried to do is kind of back that up into what would that look like in terms of an annual safety target. So as y'all know, there's 5 safety targets that the MPO adopts based on these 5 performance measures. And it's typically based on a 5-year rolling average to calculate a sort of starting point, and then you use your goal to help establish by how much you would like to reduce that in the coming year. So options have been to either adopt the state set targets based on the state goals, or you can adopt it other ways. You can go through a more realistic approach, like some of the descriptions I gave earlier, goal-driven, or some kind of hybrid. So the state level targets, again, are based on the state goals and their state strategic highway safety plan, achieving a significant reduction by half by 2035 and ultimately moving towards 0 by 2050. And so I'll just revisit those questions. What goals or what scenario best fits your goal and your vision for the region, and what most closely aligns with your trends. So this is zooming in on each of those 4 in the very early onset. And then I think Trista may have some more specific numbers that could match any one of these scenarios that you could consider for that 2025 safety target setting. And that's it.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Taking a deep breath on this one.
So, after last month's meeting, we did coordinate with Lauren, and we really wanted to give you all kind of a menu of options, possible safety targets, and include the feedback that we've heard. And some of the feedback that we heard is that aiming for a Vision Zero goal may not be the most realistic for our region. And having a dramatic reduction in crashes and crash fatalities in the near term, especially since our targets are for 2025, also might not be the most realistic. So a lot of the scenarios that Lauren put together is trying to incorporate the feedback that we heard from you all last month. But in general, I think for today, we're looking for the board's direction on what scenario we feel like is most realistic for this region, and setting the targets accordingly.
I'll summarize again. I think the issue that the board had was that we were trying to set expectations based on a pie in the sky, feel-good number that we will never, ever achieve. And we wanted to set more realistic goals and attainable goals, right? But with that, I will open it up, and we have, I already see 3. And because Council Member Rooney is at the top of my screen, we'll start with Kim.
Thank you so much. So it seemed to me like an average reduction, which seemed like option number 3, could make the most sense when messaging to the public, but could also result in the appearance of success, even if our road designs are resulting in an increase in serious injury crashes. Because frankly, it seemed like the way the arc was moving is out of sync with the growth that we've been seeing. But given my personal accountability with constituents and my interest in designs that result in safer streets for all of our communities, especially with the best return on investment and strategy for drawing down state and federal funds to make our roads safer by design, I'm really grateful for my colleagues around the table who are pursuing options for both realistic and attainable goals, but does staff have a recommendation for which of these options is the best strategy to get the money so we can especially make it possible for our smaller towns, communities, cities, and rural areas that have smaller budgets for maintenance? I would hate for us to set a goal that results in less funding.
Staff's, I'll say my understanding of this is that as of right now, there is no real tying the targets to the funding. I'll note that that is something that is regularly discussed between MPOs, RPOs, and NCDOT in Raleigh. But it's something that is very complicated. So as of right now, it's not something that's tied to the funding. The main thing is if you don't hit your target, you have to spend all your safety funds that the federal government gives to North Carolina. Right now, NCDOT already does that, and that's a good thing, I think. So in terms of our opinion, I think the staff opinion is we want to support our board with whatever goal they feel like is most applicable for our region. And we've heard that the state targets are very aggressive. We have not hit the targets in a number of years. The feedback we got is our board wanted something more achievable and more realistic. And so, you know, I think the scenario C, as you mentioned, Councilmember Roney, that I think fits the mold in a lot of ways. But just to be clear, in terms of funding strategies, as of right now, this is not something tied to that.
Are there other DOTs that don't spend on their safety targets because they meet their targets? Or their safety funding?
Lauren, you might have a little more background on that, but I mean, my understanding is every state sets their targets differently. Some show an increase in crashes and fatalities, but at a lower rate than their trend lines. And others have very aggressive targets, such as North Carolina. But Lauren, if you have any more information, that'd be great.
Well, I don't know if of any states. Well, there may have been some states who have reached their targets. I see Brian Mayhew is on the call. He probably would have much better insights than I would about other states if they've either approached it differently or if there are any states that have not spent their money.
Okay. I think the last part I'll mention is that if we move towards an option C, I just think we should probably be really careful if it looks like we were effective in reducing the fatalities based on the previous 4 years, but ultimately had more accidents. I think we just have to be really careful about that narrative.
I agree. Yeah. So I know Mayor McAllister has his hand up as well.
Thank you. I have two questions. One, what are the implications on us if we were to be out of compliance?
We would not be able to take actions on our transportation improvement program, i.e. have funding authorized for transportation projects moving forward. That's the information you.
Okay.
So we have to something.
I get it. And when you are ready for a motion, Tristan, can we literally propose A, B, C, D, or do we need to go back to the chart in our last meeting that we voted on?
So I think for today, we've got Lauren's goal scenarios that I would recommend looking at those.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have the Honorable McGrady. Chuck? Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm here. It just took a second. First, I want to apologize to every member of the board. I think I was the troublemaker that brought this up. I have view that you don't set goals that you just can't meet. If you want to make them aspirations, that's fine, but calling them goals, there is no possibility we would meet the goal that's out there unless we're going to do away with alcohol and somehow force people to wear their seatbelts and do a range of things that NCDOT doesn't actually have any ability to affect, probably. So all I'd like to see is goals that we can meet and begin to lower the the accidents that we have out there, but in a way that is more realistic, even if they're, not likely to be met, at least there's the possibility. So, of the four goals, A is what I would not vote for. B is of the same nature I can't support. C and D I can probably support. Um, Recognizing we'll probably go through this at another point. Um, I'm going to continue to pursue this at the NCDOT board level. Um, Quietly initially and maybe less quietly sometime later on. Because again, it's just a view that we need goals that, are, we can get close to, or at least directionally are right. And I just don't believe that the so-called aspirational goals are what we ought to be about. Um, I'm not particularly worried about the money going away over this issue, particularly, unfortunately, post-Helene. That's not realistic to happen. So I understand the feds always do this. They put restraints on us to scare local officials into complying with, whatever the mandate that comes down. But I'm not particularly scared on this one. And the other thing I'd add is, Tristan, I just don't want to, fight a battle that results in distracting our staff from the rest of what you do. That would be like the tail wagging the dog here. So if one of these, if going to C or D in what I'm suggesting, is going to take an extended amount of your time, tell me that, and I'll go along with aspirational goals and spend my time attacking them in other forums. But if it's possible to perhaps reflect in these goals something that's more realistic, then that would probably be helpful in terms of making sure that, maybe other MPOs take a similar tack, which will eventually get NCDOT recognizing that the RPOs and the MPOs are in a different place than the State Department, and maybe we can make some movement here. Again, I'm not against safety. I just think the goals need to be realistic. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think we would be the first one in the state, the MPO that doesn't go along with the state recommendations.
I haven't kept up with the Raleigh MPO, Campo. They may have already done so, I'm not sure. But Chuck, no apologies. Chuck and I chatted afterwards. This has been a great discussion, no matter how you look at it, and worthy of staff follow-up. I don't think there's anyone who wants less safe roads here. It's really, how do we make this more achievable and hopefully down the road, something that's more meaningful?
I'm all for aspiration, but well, it's like saying every project we put forth is going to be funded. It's the same kind of thing. It's not attainable. So will this increase your workload?
My understanding is not by much. NCDOT has offered, if we set our own targets, Brian Mayhew has his hand up, terrified he's going to counter me. But my understanding is NCDOT would take on a lot of the work required for tracking alternative targets. Brian Mayhew, Chief Engineer of NCDOT, please let us know what's on your mind.
All right, thanks, Tristan. And just one quick correction: I'm state traffic engineer. Excuse me, I do work for the chief engineer, but no, this is a great conversation. This is a very good discussion. I applaud you guys for being willing to have it. It's not ever an easy discussion. I'll circle back to just a couple comments that were made. Do not have this conversation, or don't select your targets based on fear of losing access to federal funds. You do need to adopt a goal. It can be aspirational, or it can be very targeted or focused, like what you guys are leaning toward. But don't do it out of fear of losing access to federal funds. That's we at the department and NCDOT. We're intentionally positioned in a way where that is not going to happen, at least based on current rules and guidelines. The other comment I'll make. Safety's hard. Sustaining reductions in fatalities and serious injuries is difficult. It's a marathon. It's a long haul journey, right? So that's why your goal is often out, 2050, 2060, something like that. And then what is the pathway to that? And to Chuck's comments and others, the only groups and that have been really successful in reducing fatalities and serious injuries is when you develop a lot of partnerships, right? So we know that alcohol is a problem on our roads and people not wearing seatbelts. And there are groups, safety-focused groups that focus on those issues. There's MAD, there's SAD, there's AAA. There's all sorts of stakeholders, especially in public health, that have a role in this. And so part of the reason for selecting a goal is to take a look around the room of who's sitting there next to you and who are the partners that you're going to need to work with to actually make a difference, because we're not going to do it just through the STIP, or we're not going to do it just through an HSIP project. It's going to have to be with partners. Part of the reason for adopting goals and targets is so that you have to look for those partnerships, maybe perhaps a little bit more than what we've done in the past at an agency. So I just wanted to comment, you guys are having an excellent conversation. You guys will probably be ahead of Campo on the first in the state to identify your own goals. I will say real quick to Chuck's comment about NCDOT selecting an aspirational goal. Absolutely, we have year after year gone through a process which is stakeholder driven, with a big tent with a lot of different people, and the results of that process has trended aspirational. We do believe that we will start moving toward more focused goals, but we're less worried about meeting or not meeting the goals than we are having sustained decreases year after year. Like that's really what we're looking for, is reductions in fatalities and serious injuries year after year. One final comment: if DOT had selected goals that were easy to meet, goals and targets that were just so easy to meet that we didn't pay attention to them, then back to the first person's comments, we would think we're making progress without actually making a difference. And that's not what we wanted to do. So we did select aggressive goals. One reason was to make sure that we had tough conversations. We wanted to fail those goals so that people would start saying, well, what are we doing about safety? So we would have bigger conversations to Chuck's points, right? So anyways, that's my comments, Tristan. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I think you guys are heading down a great path from what I can tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
I can guarantee you that we will have the same conversation next year. So I don't think that it's going to lessen our conversation about safety. And, yes, Councilmember Rooney.
Yeah, given what I heard, I still have some of the same concerns, so I probably wouldn't support a C or D just because of that concern about how we do the work and how we measure. And I am deeply concerned that if we want to give the appearance of doing better, but actually end up doing worse, we at least need to talk really plainly about that, even though it's a hard conversation. So I'm more inclined to support a or B. I know it's hard when we only have two options and it's yes or no. So I appreciate that, the conversation.
Anthony.
Yes.
So I'm also like Chuck, because last year I was the troublemaker that said this doesn't make any sense. And I really love the explanation today. And the first thing I thought of when she explained it was B, because if you don't have to set a specific, you say we are going to reduce, that truly is our goal, okay? And I don't think we've met the goal for the last many years. So you can't really change a goal if you don't meet a goal. So if we come up with a goal that says we want to reduce by some kind of percentage, and then we prove that we've met that, then you go up a little more. But if you don't ever go up, if you don't ever meet that goal, which we've not since I've been sitting here, that's where we all have hit that wall.
Yeah. I think the goal is that we reduce year over year.
Reduce something,
we can't
right.
say we're going to reduce to get to zero by 2050. That is not attainable.
Not realistic.
Right?
Not realistic.
It's not realistic, but to Kim's point, we definitely need to make sure that we don't set a goal that, oh, we're feeling good that we've met our goal, but we're not reducing the talent.
Even if you said you're going to reduce 1%, I mean, just saying reduce is good, but if we could prove that we reduced 1%, then next year you could say 2.
Right. We have to reduce. That is the goal, right? It's just to reduce. Councilmember Rooney, you still have your hand up?
Apologies.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to make sure you didn't want to speak, Jim. Any other comments in the online or in the room? Then I will entertain a motion of A, B, C, or D, or E, right? We have multiple options, multiple choice.
Hey, Lauren, would it be possible to put those scenarios back up?
That's what they're on. Put them back up to the screen.
You and Anna.
And E would be continuing with the same.
A is the aspirational goal of getting to zero by 2050. That's cutting in half in the next 10 years.
And we'll go back to the descriptions.
Yes, Lauren, can we go to the description?
This is Chuck McGrady, can I?
Absolutely.
Just in terms of process here, rather than extending this for a long time period, I was wondering whether we could informally poll people just to get their, just say A, B, C, D, and figure out if there is some sense of where the majority is. And then we put forward that motion rather than going through one or two or three of these things before we light on the right place.
I think that's a fantastic idea, Chuck, since the last time we had 4 different motions.
Yeah.
With 3 failures.
And I think, so Lauren is joining us with a very tight schedule. We're very grateful for her joining, but just in case she's doing multiple things at once. So scenario A is a 50% reduction by 2035 and 0 by 2050. Scenario B is a reduction by 2040, or sorry, 40% reduction by 2040, and not quite getting to zero in the foreseeable future. C is a steady reduction moving towards zero by 2055. And D is a steady reduction with a 75% reduction by 2055 and maintenance after that, not attaining zero in the foreseeable future. So to note, A and C get to zero eventually, albeit at a different pace than NCDOT's target. B and D do not get to zero, but have varying levels of reduction in the future.
Well, not to muddy the water, but I'm kind of between C and D, B and C.
Right.
But I guess I would just start throwing something out. I would favor C. I'm not making, I mean, I'll make that motion if you want me to, but
We're going to poll.
if you want to poll everybody, that's
I want to
fine.
see what they're doing first, and then we'll take a little tally and say the majority favors one or the other, and then I'll ask for a motion to bring that way. How's that?
Is an answer to the poll remaining the same? Which is kind of what Chuck was saying?
Right, there's one, which would be A.
A was what is originally,
A is what the state has suggested.
but what did we decide, which is why we're discussing this again. So is that an option?
That is not an option because we would lose all completely. We have to.
But that's not what Chuck said, right? And what Brian said, correct?
Right, they said that if we do not attain our goals, we will still get funding, but we are required to set.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct. All right. This is, probably the most complicated issue.
Can we just go down the line and say A, B, C, D and get the
I
people?
will do a roll call of, do people's preferences, do we want to limit it to one, or can they do multiple?
I was going to suggest we could just have people raise hands.
Oh, that's
If
perfect.
they want to do, we can just read through really quick.
Yes.
So scenario A, 50% reduction by 2035, zero by 2050.
And in your own mind, if you raise your hand, if you're in support of that, Chuck, you have your hands raised.
I do not see any hands raised. Chuck, is your hand raised for scenario A? No.
No, it's not now.
There we go. That's why I asked. Scenario B, a 40% reduction by 2040, not attaining zero, but maintaining a significant reduction in the future. We've got 4 for B. For C, that is a steady reduction moving towards zero by 2055.
Towards zero.
Towards zero.
Not zero.
It's, in the scenario, it does get to zero, but it does, the wording says towards zero.
Fine.
That's important, the word.
Yes.
Yeah, the word towards is important.
Towards is okay.
Okay, and then D is a steady reduction, 75% reduction by 2055.
Is the analytical spot, that's just saying. And we have how many on one? 2, and one in room 3.
And Jennifer Hensley said C in the chat.
Okay.
She might have dropped off, but
Okay.
she did support C.
Yeah, she's traveling today, so thanks
Thank
you,
you,
Jeff,
Jeff.
for joining.
Thank you.
Our forum report is very grateful.
Yes, so I will let you know, and then we'll ask for a motion. There were 0 for A, I'm shocked. There were 4 for B, 10 for C, and 3 for D. So With that information, I'll entertain any question that might be out there.
McGrady's motion to adopt C.
Thank you, Honorable McGrady. Second. And Commissioner Inslee, second. So we'll,
Can we read it?
yes,
That it really says towards?
yes, please agree.
Yes, this is the memo from Lauren. Lauren, if you're there, feel free to jump in. For C, the goal in this scenario is a steady reduction in fatalities and serious injuries moving toward zero by 2055. So to be clear, the actual targets we would be setting would be 70 for 2025, 70.6 fatalities, a fatality rate of 1.383. That is number of fatalities per million vehicle miles traveled. Serious injuries, 159.4. A serious injury rate of 3.122. So that's the number of serious injuries per million vehicle miles traveled. And non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, 29.3.
Thank you. So we have a first by Chuck McGrady and a second by Kevin Inslee, and we'll do a roll call.
All right. Asheville Kimroni,
With respect, no.
Biltmore Forest Drew Stevens,
Aye.
DOT Division 14 Chuck McGrady,
Aye.
Canton Dr. Ralph Hamlet,
Aye.
Flat Rock Emily Whitmire,
Aye.
Fletcher Jim Player,
Aye.
Haywood County Kevin Inslee,
Aye.
Haywood County Brandon Rogers,
Aye.
Henderson County Jay Eagles,
Aye.
Henderson County Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
You said Jennifer Hensley dropped off.
I believe so.
Madison County Matt Wechtel,
Aye.
Mills River Jeff Moore,
Aye.
Montreat Tom Widmer,
Aye.
Urban Transit Larry Harris, Waynesville Anthony Sutton,
Just to clarify my vote, I really appreciate all of your work, but I want to give us some cover, political cover, so I'll vote no.
Weaverville Catherine Cordell,
Aye.
and Woodfin Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Thank you. That was probably the best discussion we've had in regards to this. I really appreciate everyone's work. That was fantastic. And so thank you very much. We may need some political cover, but we'll see. Next is the resolution of support for new class highway reduced conflict intersection. And we'll start with Tristan and then
Yeah, so I thought this was a nice follow-up. Something NCDOT has requested a resolution of support from the FBO on is a proposed safety project at the intersection of US 1923, Carolina Boulevard, which at Waitsville Way, which is an intersection between Clyde and Canton. NCDOT has noticed a pattern of crashes at this intersection, including serious injuries, as well as, I believe, one fatality. Correct me if I'm wrong, NCDOT folks. And they are proposing a safety intervention project that is considered a proven safety countermeasure. First of all, why are they asking for a resolution of support? We don't usually do this with projects. One of the big reasons is that safety projects tend to be a little controversial, especially the treatment that's being proposed of reduced conflict intersection. A lot of times people tend to see those interventions as solely being there to make left turns hard. That is a side effect. But based on studies done across the country, this intervention specifically has been found to have a 63% reduction in severe and fatal crashes. One thing I want to note in some of the conversations with some of our local partners leading up to this is that, you know, this type of improvement wouldn't address some certain specific concerns. That's true. But I'll note that there's not many safety interventions out there that reduce things by 100%. Staying home, I guess. But a 63% reduction is something that is significant in terms of a safety intervention. So I'll hand it off to NCDOT to provide a little more specifics on the proposed project. And we've got Jay Hollingsworth as well as Cody Weddle from Division 14.
Thanks, Tristan, for the introduction. As you were saying, this is a reduced conflict intersection, or RCI, in between Clyde and Canton on 1923. And I just have a small, short presentation to run through the specifics of the projects, go through the project location, the safety information, design concept, and then open the floor up to questions and concerns or comments. So just a vicinity map, as Tristan's already pointed out, with the project location and project limits. As you can see, the Waitsel Way right here is where this conflict is happening, or these conflicts are happening. And the idea of this project is to eliminate left-hand movements coming out of here. And left-hand movements are the ones where that we're seeing the majority of crashes and the 2 fatalities, Tristan. It was 1 accident and 2 fatalities. But like Tristan pointed out, these a lot of times will give the residents in the area some grief because it is a slight irritation. And so essentially what we would be requiring them to do is have a right-hand movement out of Waitsel Way here, which this is a medical center, by the way, and is, you know, pretty heavily traveled and used. So a lot of senior citizens, as you can imagine, and elderly. So they would essentially have to take a right-hand turn out of here and come down 1,000 feet down Carolina Boulevard to a U-turn here. And so, you know, 1,000 feet is at 10, 15 seconds around where they're used to going. So it's not, you know, a terrible inconvenience. And as Tristan also pointed out, these treatments have been tested to reduce by 63%, which is an astounding number. And this project had been on our radar for some time. And then several years ago, when the fatalities happened, it brought this benefit to cost ratio up to 5. And that really put it on the radar. And so that's why we're coming to you guys with the resolution of support. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And I'd like to open the floor up to questions, comments, or concerns.
It seems like in Haywood County, we have had a plethora of fatalities lately because of the Interstate 40 people not being able to use that coming through using alternate routes. And personally, I would be willing to take the heat from constituents for 15 seconds to save a life. I can't speak for Commissioner Kingsley or Rogers or for Dr. Hamel. I think we could all get together.
Well, I'm very familiar with this intersection. Actually, Waitsel Way, it was named after my grandmother. So, and my family have used that for years and years. But I do remember the fatalities, and actually there was a dog that was killed also in that same wreck. So, but I mean, I'm like you, Anthony. I would support that because it's a very busy highway. You're in straightaways there where you can really see well, but people are going really fast. And I can remember my grandfather telling me one time he got hit there because he said, I pulled out and I didn't even see him, and he should have saw him. And I don't know why he didn't see him, and I don't know what it is about that intersection, but anyway, it is a dangerous intersection, and to go down and turn around, I don't think that would be a problem. And I guess I would ask, if you're going towards Canton, let's say you pull out on the other side of the road. I know the people that live on the other side of the road opposite the medical center. That's Midway Medical Center. There used to be a bowling alley there too, by the way. Just to kind of give you an idea if you know much about Haywood County. But anyway, if they're going to go towards Canton, but they want to go towards Waynesville, so will they have to go on up to Canton to turn, or will there be another turn not far up the road, do you think?
There already is a similar treatment up the road that they would do a U-turn with a bulb out there.
Okay, great.
Yep. A good question.
I'm just trying to orient myself because I go this road pretty regularly, but I'm drawing a blank here. Where you're proposing the new U-turn zone, what was that? What business is that in front of right there? I'm just trying to orient myself on the road.
Yeah, I think so.
There's like a gas company down there, I think, maybe, and
this
or no,
is
it block.
I think it's more Crawford, right?
Crawford.
Is that near
Crawford?
There's a cemetery down there, but I think that's on further down.
Church.
It'll definitely have that pull-over thing. That's part of the,
Yeah, so that's not a business right there, where that U-turn's gonna be?
Yes, this is Midway Tire.
Okay, Midway Tire, all right, I know where you're at now, okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
little drop right there, Midway.
Yes,
One observation, and your studies may answer the question I have. Being familiar with Midway, so many, as was pointed out, so many senior citizens use that service.
Yes.
And I'm curious as to the safety of a U-turn for many senior citizens, who just pointed out that this is a very traveled highway. On the other side too, and someone of age, and I know it can happen to young folks too, but someone who's not really 100% of the game, trying to negotiate a U-turn.
Yes, sir. I was having trouble hearing you, but that's a very good comment. But the idea of these, and the reason they are so effective, is that once they get into this median area here, they're not having to cross 3 and 4 and 5 lanes of traffic. And we've seen far fewer accidents when they're making these left-hand movements, like they would have to make at Midway Tire, than crossing these, because they would be going in with the flow of traffic, not across it.
Well, would a traffic signal be within the realm of possibility?
So when we analyze traffic situations, a traffic signal is at the very bottom of the list as far as a safety treatment. Traffic signals cause wrecks. And it's because you have so much traffic going in multiple different directions. When you do an RCI and somebody's turning right, they have to look at traffic coming from one direction. When they get into the median to do their U-turn, they're looking at traffic that's coming from one direction. So you're eliminating the conflict once. That's why it's so successful. A traffic signal does not do that.
I was going to ask that too, so I'm glad you spoke. Thank you.
So, and you know, we've done that, and full disclosure, most people in the room know this, but maybe not everybody. I work for an insurance company, it's my real job. I mean, studies have proven time and time again that when you're scanning traffic to search, you know, when you're going to look for oncoming traffic, if you blink in that process, that blinking process is a natural effect that you do. You can miss a vehicle
in that blink. And that's part of where this comes from, I think, too, is why, you haven't only scanned one direction instead of two directions, and you're eliminating a step out of the process by doing that. I'm probably not explaining this properly, but I think, I see the logic behind it. It does seem a little bit odd, and I know, to ask, not just elderly people, but there's a lot of challenge drivers out there, let's face it. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't need insurance, but there's a lot of challenge drivers out there, and some people are more adept at being able to do certain maneuvers than others. But at the end of the day, if you're only giving them one area to focus on, I think it is probably an improvement. There's no way to make it foolproof. Just like I feel like, and I hate to say it this way, there's no way we're ever going to get fatalities to zero. I don't care unless you just take cars away. You're never going to, that's not an option. You're never going to get fatalities to zero, and you're never going to be able to eliminate all accidents. And at the end of the day, that's why we call them accidents, because they're an accident. But I think it's probably a better solution than the traffic signal. Yes, Dr.
Again, being familiar with the area.
Yes.
And, it's a high stress situation. You go to the clinic and blood work, whatever. Would it be feasible to have the U-turn at Crawford Ray, but also put a light in the lane for the U-turn? And I've seen those up in Biltmore. Would that be feasible?
So you can do that if the traffic warrants, and in this case, it does not.
Could you explain the U-turn? Is it where you come and you have to actually turn, or is it going to be what I call a wider U-turn where you can actually gain speed before you come back in? Do you have what the U-turn will actually look like?
One of those slides did, Jay, if you can pull that up. It's a bulb out.
Yes, you're talking about, yeah.
It's not a merge lane, but it is a bulb out.
It's a bulk out. Yeah. So you're not doing a full.
You're not turning into traffic. You can go into that bulb out.
Okay.
It gives people a chance to, if they need to cross traffic, they don't have to merge into it. If they have an option to get out of traffic and then wait temporarily and then go after traffic passes when it clears.
So they have somewhat of an escape area there, essentially, if they kind of misjudge things, right?
Exactly.
Or you can get there and pause and then look. Does that self-alleviate some of your concern? I think so.
I may have missed this. Would it also eliminate left turns into the clinic?
No, left turns are still allowed into the clinic, just not out.
Sure. But then you're only crossing a couple of lanes with the maneuver. Yeah. Those y'all that don't know
It's a
about
very
it.
odd spot because you can see for a long way. But I come out of there and been surprised how quickly a car is coming home.
It's hard because there's always, people aren't consistent with their speed. Someone's always passing someone. So what looks like a certain speed when you first glance, then you blink and somebody's moved up.
That is correct, because it used to be that you never sped in this area because you knew that if you went through Clyde going 135, you were going to get speed. Sure. Right? Sure. That was whenever they had their own police department. Yeah. So
And if you want to
have it is I slow down.
One other thing, Anthony, is this picture shows two entrances to the medical center there, and the medical center has redone their parking lot, and there's only one entrance there. You see there's an island and two entrances. Now there's just one. And I think they did that because you could have two cars pull up at the same time trying to pull out. So they've taken some precautions also for that.
I got rid of the police department.
Yes.
It's now, yeah, it's water department. Hammer down, baby. I can get through there faster now.
It is now monitored by the sheriff's department as a contract to monitor that area as well. So your ticket money will not just go to Clyde, it will go to
We welcome you there.
I have a habit of just throwing mail when I come over that hill. When you've done it for years. With that being said, is there any other discussion?
Hey, this is Brandon. I would just like to add that I travel that road probably sometimes. Yesterday, for example, I was through there 3 different times, and I think it's a great idea. I think, you know, to add 10, 12 more seconds onto somebody's traffic patterns, well worth saving a life. So using these other bulb outs in other areas, it's very convenient, gives you a chance to pull out of the way and wait till traffic's clear. So I support it and think it's a good idea.
Thank you. I think you have all the constituents from, or all the elected officials from here supporting this point. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
Do I have a second? And Dr. Kimlet, second. Roll call.
Sorry, 1 minute.
I'm going to add something while I was just looking that up, just because everybody keeps bringing up the 15-second delay. We actually find that there's not a delay hardly at all, because to turn left, you have to wait much longer than turning right and going down to the bulb out. So that's kind of a misperception. So it's just for information purposes.
And even though left turns are job security for a traffic engineer, which I avoid left turns.
Yeah.
I'll go down the road, turn right, and go.
Yeah, that does it for a reason, right?
That's right.
Hey, Steve, this is Cody. I appreciate you mentioning that. That was something I was going to, bring to the room for even future discussions with this type of roadway design. Because are effective as they are, we do anticipate finding other opportunities to construct these in other areas. Because as maybe noted in a previous presentation, this is a federally funded, would be a federally funded project through the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And so it's 100% federally funded, and I think that's another important note.
Yeah. Just in case anyone didn't understand that, he said it's 100% federally funded for through the Highway Safety Improvement. Yep. And we're ready for roll call.
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Wilmer Forrest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Flair.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Jay Egoff.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechtel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Woodmer.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell. Aye. And Woodson, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Fantastic. Next, we will move to another item that I think I've heard about for just like one over here. It's the 2050 preferred growth scenario selection. And we'll start with Tristan and then go to Colby.
All right, so I'll give what I hope will be a quick introduction. A lot of you guys have seen these slides before. Henderson PAC, about less than 24 so with the 2050 socioeconomic projection study, that's an important study that goes into our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update, so our 25-year plan. It serves as the basis for our region's travel demand model. And so it's a very important step for us to plan for the next 25 years. To note in terms of updating the model and its role in playing with it, or updating it, is that the population, employment, and tourism growth that we are anticipating, as well as where that growth is likely to impact, those are the responsibilities of the MPO and our member governments to determine. And so, again, that serves as the basis for the travel demand model. And then from there, NCDOT uses the model to help make those traffic projections. So the inputs, those are the MPO and this board's responsibility. The outputs primarily by NCDOT. And just to note, the model outputs, they play a key role in identifying future congestion issues and potentially safety issues, which we'll talk about some other day. And it's used as a base for traffic forecasts that help determine the number of lanes needed to accommodate future growth. So it played a key role in the I-26 connector discussions that have happened over years and years and years. And determines the feasibility, or helps determine the feasibility of intersection treatment, including the number of turn lanes needed to accommodate future growth. For this study, we requested our consultants to look at 4 different growth scenarios. One is the baseline growth based on recent trends, local plans, and market forces, as well as a number of other factors that Colby will go into. Dispersed growth, which would be reducing allowable densities in urban areas. So basically, what if we essentially limit our densities and have more of our growth in further out areas? Consolidated growth, which would be increasing allowed densities in urban areas and increasing restrictions in some of the undeveloped areas or more rural areas. And then accelerated growth, which would be assuming our region exceeds the population and employment projections that have been developed by the State Office of Budget Management. So in our discussions, we've kind of filtered it down to 2 scenarios that we feel like are most realistic. One is the baseline scenario, and Colby, I won't spoil too much, I promise. The baseline scenario based more on, again, those recent changes or recent trends, but one kind of con that I noticed in your agenda packet is it generally assumes that we're not going to make policy changes in terms of housing and land use in the next 25 years. The consolidated scenario is a little more aspirational, but I don't get to attend a ton of housing and land use meetings, probably for the best for everybody. But in those discussions that I've been in, a lot of what I hear is the need to look at changing policies. And that's happening not just within our region, across the state and across the country. Housing and land use, the current trend lines, there's a lot of discussion and change. So in general, those are the 2 scenarios. I will opine, and you'll see why I don't get invited to a ton of housing meetings. But population growth, tell me if I'm wrong, it's been a big topic of discussion across our region, in our local governments, at a lot of levels of government. And our region is an attractive region for a lot of different people. And so growth, you know, I'm from the Midwest, where parts of where my family came from would kill for population growth. But at the same time, that brings a lot of anxiety and concerns about accommodating growth. Just to note, I think there's some myths out there about the way our region has grown. A lot of the folks I talk with sometimes talk about the growth in our urban centers. Just to note, a lot of our growth is not happening there. So there's 5 census tracts that account for about 25% of the population growth between 2000 and 2020. And that is largely in unincorporated areas in southern Buncombe and northern Henderson County. And there's also a few areas in the MPO that have actually lost population. Just to go through those really quick, the area that's roughly built on forest, a lot of protections and considerations there, and their population reduced by 4 people, so not terribly significant. There's a census tract.
Some bad health, though, you know.
In Haywood County, there's a census tract that includes parts of downtown Waynesville and the areas around downtown Waynesville that lost 86 people. In Asheville, there's a census tract right around Charlotte Street in North Asheville that lost nearly 6% of its population between 2000 and 2020. That's just on the other side of 240 from downtown Asheville. It's where the new apartment complex. There was and I'll touch on that really quick. I shouldn't. But there was a planned development there, and a big part of the concern was what growth does to areas. But something I noted is that, you know, one of I think the errors that we make in considering development and traffic impacts is that we look immediately around the development for traffic impacts. The thing is, though, cars travel distances. I should put that in our orientation. I assume people know this. And so it's possible to have an area with limited development that is still feeling the impacts of growth outside of that community. Just to note. And then 2 census tracts outside of Hendersonville, or in Hendersonville, that almost totally encompass downtown Hendersonville, that lost population as well. Just to note, population growth isn't the only type of growth there is, so it's not that it's totally devoid of development. But to me, there's a trend there. And I think it goes against some of the popular sentiment that's out there about growth. I added this after yesterday's discussion on this, that some people say that there's a popular meme that are, you know, this town is full and that town is full. And just to note, Asheville and Hendersonville are our most densely populated communities. They are roughly tied for 33rd most densely populated. And that's communities in North Carolina, not the country.
Especially when you go to New York, San Francisco. You're just pointing out.
Something else I've heard.
I'm moving here from, though.
Something else I've heard is that, you know, there's concerns about areas of development leading to large changes. I just want to note this is one census tract, there's many others, not to pick on it, where there was limited housing development, but the demographic change was immense. So keeping buildings the same doesn't always keep your community members the same. Something else just to note, especially, you know, within the trends we're seeing, a lot of lower income populations are moving out of the areas, out of our job centers, where housing is increasing the most rapidly. So
I'll play some plug here for Commissioner announced that there is a housing new development going in downtown Asheville for affordable housing, and it's 100% affordable housing.
So to bring it back, why should we really be talking about this? In part because we want to be planning for the future. We're a planning organization. But also just to note, looking at the 5 fastest growing census tracts in our region versus the 5 slowest growing census tracts, the 5 fastest growing, on average, those households are driving more than the average person in our region, 4% more. I'll note that some of those census tracts is significantly higher than 4%. Our 5 slowest growing tracts are roughly, those households are driving 20% less on average than our region's households. So that goes back to the idea of growth and development doesn't have just impacts immediately around it. And focusing growth in areas where people are going to have to drive more is going to lead us to different kinds of traffic issues. And this is the longest introduction ever. Preferred growth scenario, just to note, this doesn't make any mandates for our local governments. I think the opinions that I've shared is mostly to get to the point that I think a more aspirational growth scenario is one that might be more in line with a lot of the conversations happening around the region about housing reform, as well as the preservation of our rural and undeveloped areas. So I will just note it's the decision of this board, but I think it's one in the realm of possibilities. But it's no mandate on our local governments. We hope you all use this data, whichever scenario this board wants to go with. But it does play a key role in our traffic forecast and what kind of developmental pattern we want our transportation system to accommodate. Colby, that's the longest introduction ever, but with us is our socioeconomic projector, Colby Brown with Manhan Group. Colby, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Tristan. And can you hear me all right, everybody?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to share a brief slide presentation. Can you see the slides as well?
It's coming up. Yes, we can see those.
Okay, great. So that was actually a really helpful introduction. It's nice to have a longer introduction setting some context. I think there's a little bit of overlap. So in the areas where there is overlap, I noticed that Tristan covered the topic much better than I could have. So that was really great. Thank you so much for bringing me here. And Tristan, thank you for the introduction. And this is our second time preparing long-range socioeconomic forecasts for French Broad River MPO. And it has been a pleasure, again, as the last time around, to work with these fine folks. So always happy to have the opportunity to help out with the Asheville region. So as Tristan alluded to, the region has grown at a robust rate. In the past 25 years, the region added about 125,000 people, and the North Carolina State Demographer expects it to do so again for the next 25 years. So our task is partly to figure out where they are going to live and work. And in order to do so, one of our subtasks is to develop household and employment forecasts. The state demographer prepares these population projections, but the employment and household numbers are somewhat sort of adjacent to those. They have some relationship to population, but it's not a direct one-to-one. So we combined the state demographer's projections with some private sources of data that we acquired, such as Moody's Economics and Woods and Poole's comprehensive economic and demographic data source. And we were able to come up with the forecast you see here on screen for households and employment. To note, as Tristan says, the accelerated scenario doubles the household growth rate, but does not change the employment growth rate, in line with a previous resiliency study that had a similar sort of what if the region grew faster than expected kind of scenario study. But for all the other scenarios, this is the growth forecast that we are allocating and analyzing. The system that we use to allocate and analyze land use change, land use growth, and really the entire real estate market for your region is a bit complex. We started with a system that we built the last time around, but we really felt it was important to make some significant improvements on that, both to address feedback we received during the last round of forecasts and also to be responsive to feedback on an ongoing basis from the prioritization subcommittee and others. So the system that we built has several different components. It has a land use change model, which uses some AI techniques, some generative AI, to simulate realistic land use changes based upon a number of factors. That's where we take into account current zoning of parcels. That goes into a build-out analysis that reflects the availability of land for development by type. That's where we screen out lands that are protected or undevelopable. In the middle of this study, we had a bit of a wrench thrown into the works in the form of Hurricane Helene and the impacts on the region. And I'm sure it's a wrench thrown at everybody, basically, in this room and on this meeting. So we had to reflect this in some form. We used the best available data we could get, and thanks to FBRMPO staff for working with partners to get us limited access to these data in anonymized and aggregate forms where we could sort of simulate the impact of the flooding without, really going to a level of detail that would be a concern for privacy reasons. The bidding model component of this represents competition in this very tight housing market that we live in. And that was something that was present in the previous generation of our forecast system and is retained here with more of a focus on housing. And then we have a new allocation model, which does something very similar to what the Community Viz software system that's widely used throughout North Carolina does. And it basically just simulates what developers are going to do, where land use is going to go geographically, given the available options for growth, kind of screening out places that just aren't options or aren't viable and ranking things in terms of site suitability. This is all paired with the Asheville Regional Travel Model. We want to create a set of forecasts that not only provide the necessary input to the travel model, as Tristan explained, but are also consistent with its outputs. Because among other things shown here, this forecasting system is sensitive to the effects of congestion on highway access to jobs, for example. And it is also sensitive to other things like transit service, limited though it may be. So we have to look at the travel model outputs and see how those affect the sort of desirability of different locations and types of land use throughout the region. And the way that we do that is by going through an iterative process where we step through a series of time steps out into the forecast horizon, basically swapping data back and forth between the travel model and the land use model. And that gets us to a 2050 result where the forecast that we're producing for land use has also taken into account the dynamics of congestion within the region. And so it's a lot of extra work, trust me, to do it that way. But I strongly, firmly believe that it's worth it to do it that way. And really, for any major, transportation network change that's really significant, you really ought to do it this way. It's widely considered best practice within the industry. So I won't dwell too long on these scenarios. Tristan already described them very well. I could say a little bit about exactly how we implemented the scenarios. For the dispersed, we basically allowed more undeveloped land to convert to developed. That's going to be, converting unprotected open space into undeveloped, into developed, say, as residential or something like that. And lowered the build-out capacity, sort of the maximum density at which development can happen just across the region, so that you hit that density limit for a given location sooner, and that forces development to spread out across the region. The consolidated scenario, what we did here is actually still pretty data-driven. So all of those submodels that I presented earlier, those are all very data-driven. They're all statistically estimated based upon observed data patterns and trends over time, and they reveal market preferences. And there is a market preference for walkable areas in especially some types of real estate, certain real estate products. Some types of employment have a preference for being near transit access. And so we just basically, in the consolidated scenario, said we're going to just amplify those tendencies here. We're not imposing a preference or a direction that's not there. We're saying, what if this increases in the future? What if this expands on this sort of seed that's already there? Thinking of what Tristan was saying about change. And the other thing that it's reflected to some degree in the VNT numbers I'm about to show, is more sort of conservation, kind of the opposite of the dispersed scenario, opening up a lot of undeveloped land. You know, sort of looking at regions that are talking about conserving open space in natural areas, and what does it mean for undeveloped areas to be less likely to transition over into development. And we talked about the accelerated and where that comes from. There's nothing fancy going on with any assumptions that would differ from the baseline under the accelerated scenario. So to bring it back to Tristan's point about current trends placing more growth in sort of high or medium high VMT areas, what the consolidated scenario does is basically kind of like reverse that trend a little bit and move households and jobs away from high and medium high VMT areas. This is VMT per household or per job, which is a tricky thing to quantify. And here we're doing it using sort of the base year calibrated output of the travel model. It's, you know, a little bit of a squishy number, but this is what we think. We can categorize these zones or areas into high, medium, low, and low. And we see that this consolidated scenario, these assumptions we're applying, do achieve the goal of kind of moving things from those higher, medium, high VMT areas to medium, low, and low. Whereas the dispersed, it's kind of scattered, but it does seem to put more in the medium high VMT category of either households or employment. And the accelerated it's going to produce more VMT. It has more households. It's sort of a given. So when we look at this in the travel model results, again, I have to put a little bit of caveat. This is somewhat subject to revision. The travel model is an ongoing work in progress. But our initial results as of just like this morning indicate that the consolidated scenario may yield like 2.2% less VMT than the baseline or business as usual, and perhaps 6.6 less VMT than the dispersed scenario. So that's kind of the bottom line that we're looking at in our initial evaluations of these scenarios in terms of like, what's the result? What's the effect on vehicle miles of travel? That translates very directly into things like emissions and safety consequences and just burden overall on the region's highway system. I'll show some maps. Again, these are draft final results, so they are subject to some revision as we work through studying this with the travel model. But basically, here's what you see as sort of the business as usual trend in terms of where our forecasting system is increasing households between 2020 and 2050. This is that same map, but for employees, and where our sort of analysis of current market trends and preferences is going to drive new employees. As Tristan alluded to, there are places where there can be declines, and our system is able to handle those declines. We engineered it to be able to handle that for the sort of subcategories or sort of, you know, edge cases where declines do happen. The consolidated growth scenario is the one I'm going to focus our maps on here, so you can see what the difference is, what we're actually doing, or what these sort of assumption differences do. Rather, we're not manually moving the growth around. Everything is using this forecast system. But what the difference in assumptions does is it tends to, as you can see, cluster things in more urbanized areas or currently urbanized areas. So where there's red, that's a place where there's less households than in the business as usual, and the gray polygons, and these are TAZs, are where there's more. I should say this is, I'm presenting maps at the transportation analysis zone or TAZ level, but this forecast has, the growth is actually allocated at a census block level. And there's even parts of it, such as the land use change model, that operate at a parcel level. So don't take this map as an indication of the overall sort of level of resolution or detail of the forecast system. It is quite detailed and takes into account parcel level characteristics as well as sort of dynamics at a census block scale. And here's the differences in jobs for the consolidated growth. It's a little more scattered than the household pattern, but still you can see with the dark gray TAZs, there is some concentration around currently urbanized areas going on here. All right, and with that, I will end my presentation and offer an opportunity to answer any questions you may have.
we are looking for action from the board today on which of these scenarios is the preferred growth scenario for our region. Again, the discussion from prioritization and TCC led to a recommendation for the consolidated growth scenario. But I think in general, a lot of the discussion focused on the baseline scenario and the consolidated growth scenario.
Just to let you know, I think, as I shared with Tristan, we've been talking about this for a year, things like that, right, Catherine? We got down in the weeds on this one to come up with our recommendation. So we did not take that lightly. It was hours of discussion. Is there any questions or comments about any of this or the recommendation?
I think we had a heavy discussion yesterday in Henderson County. Quite detailed in that way.
Thank you, Commissioner Franklin. Did you also come up with the consolidated?
We did.
It was a lively discussion, and we all went around, and it all seemed that we all came back to the same conclusion, right? Which just made more sense. We have to, the baseline is not going to continue. It's not going to continue. We've had events happen, changes in economics. I should say that. It's unlikely to occur. If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion. You know what the motion would be? There's the motion, you could make a motion to accept the consolidated recommendation for growth. So, thank you. We have a motion from, is it Commissioner? Yes. Commissioner Hill. We have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Cordell. I'm used to calling people by their first name, so thank you. So we have a first and a second, so we'll do a roll call.
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire. Fletcher, Jim Clare.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Ensley.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Jay Eagle.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechsel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Waynesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodson, Jim Callister.
Aye.
Thank you, the ayes have it. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. We got 2 more business items. And again, these was a heavy discussion at the last prioritization subcommittee, but I'm going to turn it over to Daisy.
Yeah, Daisy, please tell us what to do with $1 million of transfer funds.
Right, we can finish beating the dead horse. All right, give me just 1 second to fire up the PowerPoint here. All right, so we've been talking about this for quite some time. In January, we released the call for projects for Jarkin 5310. I'll explain in just a second what those funding sources are used for. That call for project remained open until February the 20th. On March the 5th, the prioritization subcommittee reviewed the applications and reviewed the scores that had been assigned to those applications and made recommendations that went to the TCC. On March the 13th, the TCC approved the project selection and made further recommendations to your board. And today, we're hoping to vote on the 5310 JARC project selection, to confirm those, and then in May, we'll further codify those by approving amendments to the TIP as well. So just briefly, Sorry, I'm just gonna go stay here. 5310 is a formula fund designed to help deliver the operation of public transportation services to recipients to improve mobilities for seniors and individuals with disabilities. We received just under $478,000 to use for that call for projects this year. Around $48,000 of that went to the administrative fee, which is paid to the city of Asheville as the designated recipient, and the remaining Section 5310 funds after the administrative fee is just under $430,000. To break that down further, you have approximately $263,000 that needs to go toward traditional projects, and I'll explain those in just a second. But we have to fund the traditional projects before we can fund the other projects. And then 35% has been designated as being usable for the other projects, and that comes to just shy of $167,000. This year we received 6 applications, 4 in the other category, 2 in the traditional category. And just to break that down a little bit further, traditional projects focus primarily on capital investments in public transportation, infrastructure, and equipment, whereas other projects focus on projects that go beyond traditional capital investments, including capital and/or operating projects that enhance mobilities for seniors with individuals with disabilities. And some examples of those can include travel training, volunteer driver programs, building accessible paths, and improving signage or wayfinding technology. And that's that 35% that we talked about just a moment ago. So we're going to look at the traditional project funding scenarios first. We developed 3 funding scenarios based on the projects that were submitted. We received 2 projects, one Buncombe County CEDTAP, which received a project score of 100 out of 105, and then Better Together Transportation, which received a score of 63.5 out of 105. Scenario 1 looked at funding the projects based on the amount of available funding. If we were to look at funding everything, how much could we fund each project to completion, and that came to approximately 94.32%. If we were to give everyone money equally and fund their project evenly, that's what scenario 1 does. Our recommended scenario, or the scenario that was recommended by the TCC, was for scenario 2, and that awards projects based off scores. So the way that that works is the first project scoring highest would receive the full ask that was in their application, and so that would give just shy of $263,000 to Buncombe County CEDTAP, and it would not fund Better Together Transportation for any funding based on their project score. One of the reasons for the selection of this scenario was that the Better Together Transportation project was relatively new. As of prior to the prioritization subcommittee meeting, they had only given 10 rides to date. They did not have experience dealing directly with federal funds, and both MPO staff, prioritization, and the TCC felt like this could be a pretty big project for them to take on, trying to use federal funds in that first site.
But we did, I can say that we were willing to help them in the system and give them guidance for the future.
Yes, we will be following up with them, no matter the outcome, to let them know of some additional funding sources and what their application can be done to strengthen for further cycles. Scenario 3 was similar to scenario 1, but it was a combination of available funding and points. So basically taking that ratio and multiplying it by each project point, that would give Buncombe County just under $253,000, and that would fund Better Together Transportation just under $10,000. So again, the recommendation of both staff, prioritization, and the TCC was for scenario 2, which would not award anything for Better Together Transportation for this funding cycle, and award Buncombe County CEDTAP their full ask. Moving into the non-traditional funding scenario, 4 applications for non-traditional funding. We looked at if we were to fund everyone evenly, what ratio would we be able to fund, and we would be able to fund everyone at 68.42% of their asking application. And you can see how that pans out on the slide. And that's scenario 2 looks at awarding the applications based on points. So under that system, again, we would award the highest point receivers their full application amount, and then go down until we ran out of funding. The last project would only get partial funding, and then there would be one project that would remain that would not get any funding under that scoring scenario. And then scenario 3, again, was a combination of both points and available funding that funds everyone based on the amount of available funding multiplied by the points received for their application. Staff, CCC, and the prioritization subcommittee recommended scenario 3 for the non-traditional projects funding scenario. With that, I will pause. I think we're asking you to take a vote.
I'm asking for action on this item. Again, just to clarify, the reason for scenario 2 for traditional is because of better together. That would be a big ask in the first year. And we thought that things are based on scores. We have scores for a reason. However, with the other, it was determined that all of them were very good projects. Their scores were very reasonable together, very short together. So we went with a blended. So the motion that we need is that we recommend scenario 2 for traditional 5310 project applications and scenario 3 for other 5310 project applications. With that, I'll ask for a motion. Do you have a question? Kim says she has to roll out the 3. We will try to get through this very quickly, just for the business. So do we have a motion in that order? I'll make it. So moved.
Second.
And second by
Monroney.
Rudy, thank you. Roll call?
Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
BOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Camden, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Stand up for just a moment.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire. Fletcher, Jim Clare.
Aye.
Haywood County, Kevin Inslee. I'll see if I got you. Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Jay Egoff.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechsel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Gainesville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
Weaverville, Catherine Cordell.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk very briefly about job access reverse commute. JARC, there was one applicant.
That's correct.
And the recommendation is to fully fund this.
We had one application for just under $413,000. That application came from the city of Asheville to fund ART routes 170 and S3. ART route 170 runs from the Asheville Transit Station to the Asheville Airport, or excuse me, that's S3 that runs from the Asheville Transit Station to the Asheville Airport. Route 170 runs from the Asheville Transit Station to Black Mountain. Their request was for the full available funding amount, and both our staff, prioritization, and the CCC recommended funding the project fully.
Thank you. In short order, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
This is Kim, so moved.
Thank you, Councilman Rudy. And a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Franklin.
All right, Asheville, Kim Roney.
Aye.
Biltmore Forest, Drew Stevens.
Aye.
DOT Division 14, Chuck McGrady.
Aye.
Canton, Dr. Ralph Hamlet.
Aye.
Flat Rock, Emily Whitmire.
Aye.
Fletcher, Jim Clare.
Aye.
Haywood County, Brandon Rogers.
Aye.
Henderson County, Jay Egoff.
Aye.
Henderson County, Sheila Franklin.
Aye.
Madison County, Matt Wechtel.
Aye.
Mills River, Jeff Moore.
Aye.
Montreat, Tom Widmer.
Aye.
Williamsville, Anthony Sutton.
Aye.
And Woodfin, Jim McAllister.
Aye.
I have it. Thank you, Councilmember Green. That concludes the business section of the meeting. Exodus. So now we'll move to the informational item, and it's right before 3 o'clock.
So today with us is Jessica Bond. She's the regional planner with Land Sky Regional Council, and one of the very important things she's working on is the SEDS, or the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. So they're currently doing outreach as part of that, and she knows far more about it than I do, so Jessica, take it from there.
Thank you, Tristan, and thank you all for having me here today. Yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot and appreciate being with you all. I'm going to present my screen now. Yes, essentially what Tristan said, we are, as a staff, there we go, every 5 years, there we go. Every 5 years, as a local development district who is interested in leveraging EDA funds and other federal funds, we are required to pull together a set. And that requires us to kind of get into different community groups. So Tristan was kind enough to let me join your meeting today. And I'm going to explain a little bit about the SEDS, and then I'll talk about like the SWAT process and walk through what we're doing. So essentially, SEDS is a strategy that is dictated by the EDA, so there's a whole timeline and a format that goes into it, but it's intended to be a regionally developed and reflective strategic document that helps coordinate all of the different regional plans. I heard several plans brought up here today in your transportation world that I didn't know anything about, so I'm excited to bother you all for those. So we're coordinating different regional plans that affect life here in our 4-county region. And that can be infrastructure, there's climate resilience, and different goals that the SED seeks to get regional data, gather regional data, both quantitative and qualitative. So the team that is working most closely with the SEDS is myself. On this call, we have Hayden Hedberg, who is an MPA student at Western Carolina. He's for us. Anna Lloyd and Nicole Canoe, our GIS coordinator, and then we're going to be doing staff outreach pretty soon to gather some information. So we're kind of at the community outreach phase at the beginning, and then there will be a larger community input session in the fall. So let's see here. I think we've kind of gone through all of this. Yeah, so it's kind of intended to create efficiencies with regional plans, and your input will help us inform SWOT analysis. To briefly walk through the process, we put out a community survey online at the beginning of January, and it ran through the end of February. We had 366 participants in that survey, and that survey gathered demographic data, but it also gathered kind of a brief assessment of what folks felt like were strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in our region, and they were able to rank them. Transportation was one of them. We kind of went off of our prior SWOT analyses, and there were open comments, there were recommendations, there was a spot for folks to also discuss Helene-related issues that they wanted to bring up as we do our climate resilience piece, which is part of the SED. So yeah, we did that survey. Now we're in the SWOT analysis phase. Been able to work with 7 different stakeholder groups that are affiliated with staff here and full of experts like yourselves. So thank you. But it's been good. We've done housing, area agency on aging, some green energy groups, and yeah, different stakeholders. So after we do these SWOT analyses and gather the different bits of feedback from groups, that will inform our strategic direction action plan. And we will work through that with staff but then also with our SED steering committee. And yep, you can see the rest of it here. We'll have a draft going, and then a public comment period, which is where I might reach out to you all again to engage. And just to back up, after we kind of talked through the SWOT today, I am going to probably email you in the interest of time to gather your thoughts and feedback. But we're incorporating every individual SWOT into our larger SWOT. So I'll get into what SWOT is in a moment. Yep, we'll submit it in October, and then every year we will make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to that plan, and it's reflective of what our region's current needs are. So I'm just going to kind of talk through the SWOT a little bit here. This is, I felt like, was a good framing graphic. Where are we now? It's kind of a regional snapshot, essentially. These are the SWOT that was identified in our 2019 analysis. Based on that survey, 46 individuals participated. So, you know, I think as we look at these, some of them might feel familiar to you. Yeah, our strengths are, you know, our growing senior population, our group our community. I mean, I feel like after Helene, I don't know about you all, but the mutual aid and community that came out of Helene as a silver lining was really, I feel like that is a super strength. Culture, density, diverse economy, weaknesses. So you will start to see in there public transportation, traffic, some of the things you all have been discussing today and addressing. Comprehensive land use. So yeah, these are our SWOT from 2019. And then these are the ones that that came out of that survey that I was telling you about. So these are more reflective of where people are today. And I have Hayden on the call here, so I'm going to say Hayden is going to be taking notes on your feedback. How much time do I have, Tristan? Sorry.
We should probably wrap up, but we can send out materials.
Yeah, I think some of those have actually changed since you've done this.
Yeah.
I can see some of those have changed.
Yes, they have. I will send it out. Thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Ford. So yeah, I'll send this out, and there will be a blank page where you can add things as you would like. I would really appreciate your feedback, especially a group full of experts like you all, and your perspectives. I'll also share out just a brief blurb of what came out of the survey that is closely tied to transportation and planning. And thank you for your time. I will yield my time.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jessica. That was, trust me, the people on this board will love that. So very good. Next is regular updates. Division 13.
Hannah has to drop off the call, so.
26 is going. Did she give you a list, or?
She just said she had to drop off, so.
The division updates are available in your agenda packet.
Absolutely, and I go through it. We all know what her updates are. And Division 14?
Do we want to see that for my updates as well?
No, we
Construction side of things, in Haywood County, obviously the big news is I-40 is open through the Pigeon River Gorge, one lane in each direction, and is actually functioning better than we anticipated. I think that people are just avoiding it, which we hope that they continue to do, and have it be mainly a freight corridor. Bridges on I-40 in the Clyde-Canton area, if you drive that, then you certainly know that those are ongoing. Good. I-26, the Henderson County portion is actually, for the most part, complete. The additional lanes won't open until the Buncombe County section is completed, and that's just a traffic safety issue that we don't want, going from multiple lanes, going back down to 2 lanes in each direction. So we'll wait until all that's complete. I don't know what the time frame is for the Buncombe County section, but they're very close. In Henderson County, same projects you've been seeing for a while. Hurricane Helene did cause some damage on the Highland Lake Road project that'll have to be addressed along with the construction project. Any questions on the construction update? Project development, obviously we didn't get anything in the step, so, the same projects you've been seeing for a while, we did add the extra column so that you could compare the draft step dates to the old dates. If it says PE only, then that means it is funded to do design work, but not for construction, so it'll have to go back through PA or a further iteration of prioritization. The ones that don't have dates, it's just they have a different funding source in the STIP, so it's mostly bridges, in case you're curious about that. And that's it, unless somebody has questions. Like Tristan said, these are on their website and in the agenda package. So if you do have any questions, if any come up, don't hesitate to call me. Oh, one other thing, sorry. We have a new division engineer in Division 14. Wanda Payne retired. Wesley Grindstaff, who was, he's been several things. Most recently, he was division maintenance engineer, then the deputy division engineer, and now he's moved into the division engineer role. So he's looking forward to working with all the communities in Division 14.
Congratulations. So down here, did a nice little article.
Oh, did they?
Yes, they did. I was pleasantly surprised. Nice. Because they did a nice article. Let's see, Daniel Fellers with Transportation Planning Branch.
To save time, I'll just give one or two updates. The intermodal division IMD at NCDOT, which used to be known as BikePed, is supposed to be issuing a call for planning grants soon. This is their annual call. We've had lots of communities participate, but if you need to get a BikePed, I guess maybe transit plan funded, that is an excellent opportunity to get state funds. And then I think in the interest of time, the only other update I'll give is there's been a lot of movement, staff movement in my division. What used to be called statewide planning or statewide initiatives has been reassigned to another part of DOT. And as part of that shuffle, well, actually, as part of a different shuffle, our resiliency coordinator, or the head of who was coordinating all our resiliency efforts, Nastasha, has moved up, I think, and replacing her is Pam Cook. And if that name sounds familiar, in the olden days, she used to have my job as your coordinator in Raleigh, and she's very familiar with the area and has worked with y'all extensively. Used to be the mountains supervisor. So we welcome her to her new job, and it's just as we finish developing planning level resiliency guidance, and I think it's going to get published at the end of the month, and we are going to issue our first pilot study out on the coast. But that guidance will be available soon for any planning organization to use in development of transportation plans. And as part of, in the same realm, we commissioned a resiliency study after Helene hit about what from the transportation side of things to protect communities, and to encourage the recovery efforts, and really do long-term planning where we need to spend our investment dollars. And we've already gone through one draft of that, and I've received the final draft, and I've received the comments. So as soon as I review those, that will get published very shortly, and we'll send it out to everybody. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel? Then we'll do subcommittee work groups reports. That's up.
Okay, I won't dive into the subcommittee work groups and reports. That's available in your agenda packet. I do want to highlight a number of things. So the first thing is there's an April meeting on your calendar for the TCC and board. Just to note, we usually cancel that. We are planning to cancel that. We have our MPO conference that month, but I learned the first time I just didn't put it on the calendar. We had an emergency come up, and it's much harder to throw together a meeting than it is to cancel. So expect a cancellation. But your jobs, all of you on this call and here, is we will be having 3 public meetings on 2 very important planning efforts. Elevate 2050, our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and our Safe Streets for Western North Carolina. We'll be having joint public meetings in Hendersonville at the Henderson County Library on April 7th, in Canton at the Haywood Public Library in Canton, April 9th, and at the East Asheville Public Library on April 10th. So please come to the meeting, provide your input, look at what's going on. Daisy and the rest of our staff have been doing a great job of sending out flyers and trying to get social media promotion. So that is your job for April. Federal updates that are important. One thing that we talked about last time was that STIP amendments. So when we do TIP amendments, the state's required to do STIP amendments. It goes to FHWA division offices. Last month, USDOT changed the process and mandated that all TIP and STIP amendments go through DC headquarters for approval. That has been reversed. So we are back to the old process. I'm not sure anyone was too excited about having TIP and STIP amendments take more time. The AIDS Vaccine Coalition versus U.S. Department of State. Why am I highlighting that? That's a case that went to the Supreme Court that puts some limits on the administration's ability to withhold or rescind federal funds. Also to note, we got an alert notifying us that discretionary funds that have been awarded since 2021 are being reviewed at USDOT. That is for projects that have not been fully obligated as of yet. So just to note, there's 3 of those in our region. There are 2 transit projects with the city of Asheville. Well, actually 4. There is the recently made award to the Pratt and Whitney interchange on I-26 and the Acoustic Trail in Henderson County. And to note, as part of that review, the activities that are being flagged include equity analyses, green infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, and EV infrastructure, amongst others. Also, at the federal level, 2 previous USDOT orders were rescinded. Confusingly, they had the exact same name about implementing bipartisan infrastructure law bills. Apparently, creative naming of memos was a struggle. But both orders essentially encourage states to consider social equity and sustainability when programming funds. That has been rescinded. Some state updates and bills. I won't go through all of these, but just to highlight one bill that's out there is House Bill 201, which restricts truck traffic, or would restrict truck traffic on US 2570 in Madison County. House Bill 282 allows state funds, or would allow state funds to be used for standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. Right now, if you have a bike ped project, 99% of the time, their state funds are not allowed to be used. And the one that is in the news, House Bill 47, the Disaster Recovery Act of 2025, that was signed by the governor. And to note on the transportation end, $100 million are being provided through North Carolina Emergency Management to go towards private road and bridge repairs. Other updates with our passenger rail project, there's a $400,000 local match that's required for the next stage of studying passenger rail between Salisbury and Asheville. Somewhat not surprisingly, when we had discussions about local cost share contribution in August, it was not a very difficult conversation. After Helene, it was a very difficult conversation. But the good news is North Carolina, the OSBM, Office of State Budget Management, they plan to provide $400,000 to cover the local cost share on that project. Also, at the WMC Rail Committee, Norfolk Southern reference plans to restore rail between Marion and Nashville. And also on the state, don't forget the draft STIP. Even though the public input meetings, or the drop-in meetings, are over, you can still make public comment through April 4th. Is that right, Steve?
Yes.
All right. that'll leave my brain in 10 seconds. And so please make comments, especially about any concerns you might have with the draft step. I'll just remind people that the news wasn't great on the draft step end. And also note, the 8.0, the next round of prioritization is expected to begin this summer. We've had lots of discussion about the number of submittals in our prioritization work group, and the need to have better expressed designs and better estimates for projects being submitted. A revolutionary idea, having a good idea of what your project is and what it might cost before putting it in your budget. Where revolutions are happening. And just to note, with prioritization, we're considering shifting some of our coordination strategies due to limited funding availability. And finally, we had our new member orientation March 18th. Thanks to everyone who showed up. The MPO conference, MCAMPO, is coming up in Wilmington, April 14th through 17th. MPO staff will be there. And just a reminder, we will host that conference in 2026. So if you have any projects, anything that you would like highlighted as part of that conference, we are going to start putting together a conference committee. Mobile tours is a big part of what we'll be looking for. And so please keep that in mind. But with that, no, I'm not doing any SWOT analysis today. Thank you, Jessica. But that is all we've got for you guys today.
Perfect. Thank you. With that, do we have any public comments? Hearing none, I will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.